Welcome to our program. In today's webinar, Top 10 Ways to Supercharge iMIS with IQA Reporting, we'll discuss some of the features and benefits of IQA Reporting and show you some examples of how many of our clients are using it today. I'm Don Carnevale, Director of Marketing at Broadpoint Technologies, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. If during the webinar you require assistance with live meeting, please call 866-493-2825 and ask for technical support. Also, at any time during the presentation, you can press F5 on your keyboard to view the presentation in full screen. Press F5 again to return to your normal screen. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them using the Q&A tab at the top of the screen. We will have some time at the end of the presentation to address your questions. I'd also like to mention some upcoming events. We're presenting a webinar next week to discuss how integrating your business systems can help increase revenues and improve member loyalty. We're also exhibiting at the ASAE annual meeting next month in Atlanta at booth 327. More information is available on these and other events on our website at www.broadpoint.net/events. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Chris Echo, Senior iMIS Consultant at Broadpoint Technologies. Chris? You there, Chris? Sorry, everyone. Chris had just a moment of phone technical issues. He's calling back in. He'll be right back on. We'll get started in just a moment.
Hi, this is Chris. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, Chris, loud and clear.
Okay, my apologies for that. Thanks for the introduction, Don, and good afternoon. Thanks for joining us as we go over the IQA tool and how it can help you supercharge your iMIS implementation. So after our initial technical difficulties with the phone, what is IQA? So it's essentially the Intelligent Query Architect, which is the latest, greatest provided tool to essentially augment the iMIS ad hoc tool. So it allows for a user interface that enables non-technical users to have the power of standard query language or SQL logic querying against the database. The IQA tool actually uses something referred to as business object schema, which is essentially a framework based upon the underlying tables of the iMIS database application. So taking a look at some of the key benefits of IQA, first and foremost is we have the ability to reference predefined queries that ASI provides to us that are accessed through the home page as well as the customers, events, and orders modules. Now that's not to say that functionality for querying against other business objects or tables within the iMIS structure cannot be incorporated into IQA queries and various IQA menu options. We have the ability to copy existing queries, to customize those, and essentially do a save as or to clone those existing queries and make modifications to help those better meet your business needs depending upon whether you're a membership organization or maybe you're more oriented towards fundraising or perhaps events or product sales. Those can all be accommodated within the IQA structure. And we have the ability to use pre-built queries to help guide non-technical staff with runtime prompts. And what I mean by that is many times there are organizations that have team members that are primarily identified as the report writers or the people who build queries and provide those types of services to their internal constituents. With IQA, it's very easy to empower the end users to write their own queries and export their own data. So even if somebody does not take on the responsibility of creating their own IQA queries, they can be assisted in running those IQAs by entering information with prompts such as a state or a particular paid-through date or particular product codes. They can be empowered to take on the responsibility to extract the data from iMIS when they need it, so they don't have to wait for somebody else to generate reports or output. You also have the ability with IQA to combine existing queries. It's a very powerful tool in that it allows you to, in particular scenarios, to say, identify individuals that attended the 2012 annual conference, and then also write another query that identifies people who've attended the registered for the 2013 annual conference. From those two queries, then you can then create a third query that says, all right, show me everyone who attended 2012 but has not yet registered for 2013, and that really gives you kind of the hot list of individuals that should be solicited for whatever offerings you might have with regard to the next annual conference. One of the key features and benefits to IQA is also the ability to organize and set permissions or control access to particular queries. So in the past ad hoc queries, there was really no organizational structure and no ability to secure queries. So sometimes it became difficult for an organization to actually locate a particular query they had used in the past, or perhaps a coworker would inadvertently modify a particular query so that it no longer reflected or output the appropriate data. With IQA, you have mechanisms to control that, both in terms of organizing as well as securing that information. So moving to the top 10 IQA features that really help your organization optimize that concept of output from iMIS data. We have the ability to add queries with prompts to menu items. So you no longer have to kind of dig through the ad hoc query list and identify which query do I need to run. You can actually incorporate specific queries into different menu items in the various modules. And that's with reference to the back office, locally installed iMIS application. Our second point here is the ability to modify the iMIS staff or web view query output. So for those of you that are using the web applications for iMIS, so you're able to run these web applications from your browser, you don't need to have iMIS installed, and you can use these staff or web views internal to your organization. You can go ahead and actually change those queries which display information or allow you to search for information within iMIS through those web applications. So there are instances where I've got a client who has, they're a hosted client. They are hosted with ASI. A number of their internal users are using iPads within the office, which, iMIS does not install on an Apple operating system. But using the browser through your iPad, you can actually access the web view of iMIS. And in those situations, they were looking to be able to just look up contact records. The information that was displayed was, name, city, state, things along those lines. What they wanted to see was member type and paid-through date and email and phone number and have that display in the output. And that's really as simple as changing an IQA query that's provided by ASI. It's part of the standard functionality, and all we needed to do was add a couple of fields to that output, and that really satisfied their need to expand the availability and the display of iMIS information on these alternative devices besides, a cumbersome laptop. So moving on to the third item, we have the ability to build queries that capture records not in a subset. So as I mentioned earlier, with ad hoc query, it was very difficult to say, show me everybody who hasn't bought the book or who hasn't registered for the annual conference or who hasn't renewed. And with IQA, that's a much more direct process to identify those individuals who have yet to, participate in a particular event or renew or purchase a publication. With later versions of IQA, and when I mean later, I mean iMIS 15.2 as well as iMIS 20, we have the ability to actually chart and graph information within IQA and to publish that information to dashboards or web content. So that's leading into our fifth point here. We can actually publish IQA queries through the WCM or RISE platform, which is the Web Content Management System that's now available in iMIS 15.2 and 20, to our member site. So, for example, if you have a list of donors or some committee roster or something along those lines that you would like to display with member information and a customer profile on your member-facing website, you can use IQA to generate that list and to publish it as content in your website and make that available to your members. So moving on to our next top 10 IQA features, we've got the ability to display targeted information to your users. So as I was mentioning, if you've got a member list of committees or perhaps a list of payments or invoices or activity history, really any type of data that's displayed within iMIS, that's stored within iMIS, you can push out to your members and have that available for their viewing. Number 7 here is the ability to allow users to create ad hoc dynamic reports. So that's really the single greatest benefit of IQA is the ability to really empower your users to create those reports, to use them, to essentially share them with staff internally, and then if appropriate, create a mechanism to publish that information and make it available to members or select web users that might be accessing that information from either an internal browser or a browser-based application or the external member-focused website. At another level, IQA can be used for organizing mailings and letter merges. It can be incorporated into crystal reports that are executed from within iMIS, and it can also actually be used in generating target lists for informed mass mailings through email. But ultimately, gathering data for your business analysis, whether it's, again, membership-focused or events-focused or fundraising-focused, is really what IQA is all about. And finally, the ability to organize and secure those queries both internally within the mechanism for creating the IQAs, but also in terms of who gets to view that information, both in terms of your internal staff users as well as your external members and perhaps even anonymous web browsers who might just be going to your website. So a brief discussion about business objects. Earlier I mentioned that IQA queries are based on business objects, and this first paragraph is actually an excerpt from ASI documentation about how a business object is really a representative system construct based upon the data and business rules of the iMIS Association Management or Engagement Management System. So when we think about that, it's not just looking at the underlying iMIS tables. It's actually applying a filter that you'll be using within IQA. So for those of you that are used to crystal reporting or access reporting on the iMIS table structure, it does take a little bit of getting used to, but it's essentially the business objects are reflective of the data that's contained within tables. But if you take a step up and look at the data in terms of a transaction, perhaps a meeting registration, which is formally stored within the orders table and the order meet table and the order lines table, all of that information is now available in a business object called registration. So ASI is kind of doing the heavy lifting there in terms of kind of synthesizing data from different underlying tables within the SQL database and combining that into a business object which is more readily queried for easier, more expedient output. Another component to the business objects, and I just pulled a screenshot here of the tool, the utility that's used within the iMIS application. iMIS, of course, has the ability to have a variety of user-defined fields that can be created based upon your particular business organization's requirements. So there is a mechanism that allows for the creation of these user-defined tables to be converted or to have a business object created so that you can query against your user-defined tables through these business objects. So essentially through our tools, we select our utilities and user-defined tables and just click the Build All button. And this is a process, depending upon how many user-defined tables and user-defined fields you have, it can take 2 minutes or it could take up to, say, 15 minutes to actually generate those business objects. And once those business objects are then generated, you can use those within IQA to query against perhaps communication preferences or any type of individual or company member demographics, whatever you might have structured within your particular implementation. Another note about that, if you do make changes to any of those user-defined tables, if you add fields or add additional tables, you do need to run this utility again to update the definition of those business objects. So leading into the next portion of our presentation, I wanted to kind of step through the things that I'm actually going to demonstrate in the live environment here. With regard to a simple query, I'm going to go ahead and step through those IQA basics. How do we create an IQA from scratch? We've got our first step, which is choosing a source. It's essentially selecting at least one business object that you would then use as a foundation for defining a relationship between any multiple sources should you choose more than one business object. We'll also go ahead and set our filters to limit our query results. So are we looking for members in a particular state with a particular paid-through date, something along those lines. From there, we're going to go ahead and identify the columns or the actual fields that we would like to display in our output. We can also set the sorting order of the output. So we can sort by alphabetical or descending order, ascending order, etc. From there, we can go ahead and take a look at the ability to modify the security to limit access to a particular query. We'll go ahead and run the query to confirm that we have some output, and then we can go ahead and save the query to a particular folder. So here's just a screenshot of the first demonstration sample that I was going to go ahead and step through, which is this basic IQA query. So bear with me one moment here, and I'll go ahead and pull up iMIS. So here we have a version, iMIS 15.2, a local installation of the back office application. Within our customers module up here, I just want to show you our full navigation. So within our customers module, under Manage Customers, we've got our IQA option. If we click on Contacts there, you'll see we have our list of IQA queries as well as a number of different folders that we can have established. You can go ahead and click New and add a folder. I can call that my webinar folder, and I'll click Save there. So I've just created this new folder. I can go into this folder and create a new query. I can go ahead and name my query. Call it State Contact Search. And through these various tabs, I can proceed through the process of selecting my business object as a source. So here is our list of common or shared business objects. The business objects are used within various aspects of the web application. Those business objects that are most appropriately used for creation of IQA are the business objects that start with the CS prefix. And the CS contact is actually the business object that is really on parity, if you will, with the name table and the underlying SQL tables. So it contains all of that iMIS information that you would typically find in the name table for your querying purposes. So because I've selected one source, I don't have any relationships to combine here. For simplicity's sake, I'll just move to our filters. And this is the stage where I can see those fields that are within that CS contact business object. And looking at this information, you can see that much of this information, or many of these fields, do exactly parallel what you'd find in the name table in iMIS. So from here, let's go ahead and just say we're looking for records with a status that's active, so we can go ahead and choose our status field. And I have the ability to select comparison values of equal to, not equal to, etc. And those options change depending upon the data type of the field that we select. But for our sake, we're just looking to find active status records, and I'll go ahead and click the plus sign there. And perhaps I'm looking to find just individual members. I'm not looking for company records. So we do have a field that says, is a company, and we want that to be equal to no. So this is just going to pull up individual records, not company records. And then we want to go ahead and select the filter also for state province. Here's our state province field. And we want that to be equal to, and in this case, maybe we want to give the individual who's going to be running these queries the option of selecting more than one state. So we can go ahead and choose to click the multiple values option. And while I have the ability to select from all of those values within the state province list that's available, in this case, I'd like to actually create a prompt. I'll make that a required prompt and have the end user select the state. So moving on to my display options, there are a number of fields that display by default by association with the CS contact business object, and using this view drop-down, I can select all available fields. And looking at these available fields, I can then see that I have the ability to say add maybe the email field and the paid through date. Maybe, let's say we have member type there, so let me scroll down and I'll select email. And then I'll select the paid through, or their expiration date if they're active members. I think we're good there. Let's refresh this list. So notice now I have those two additional fields. I also have the ability to change the order in which they appear. So I can go ahead and say, I don't necessarily want the company name in first place, and I certainly don't want the country in the second field. So let me go ahead and put the full name in the first position. I'll click refresh there. And maybe I want the country to appear after city, state, and city, so I can go ahead and make country the seventh field. And actually, by making the iMIS ID the first field here, and giving it an alias of key _ contact, when I run this query, it actually gives me a hyperlink that allows me to jump right into the customer portfolio and have that particular contact populated within the workspace. So now that I've got my query display feature items selected, I can move to sorting here. And I can determine that I'd like to have the output sorted by, let's go for name last first, and I'll add that. And one of the things I want to point out is that similar to Crystal Reports, even though that particular field is not in my output, I can still sort on it. So you're not limited by the information you have in your output. So if you go ahead and click Save there, I'll click OK. I can now go ahead and run that information. I have the ability to select one or more states. So there's California and Alaska. I'll click OK there and click Find. And you can see I've got 360 records in this output that I can use to page through this information. Okay, so I can skip through pages, I can get to the last page. Notice also within the IQA standard output within this table, I can sort by any of these column headers. So if I wanted to, I could sort by paid through date in ascending or descending order. So if I double click on that, you can see it'll just change that sort order. I can also go by company name if I'd like. And then, of course, the coolest thing to me about IQA is if you want to get this information out of iMIS, you just click there on Excel, click Open, and it will launch your Excel and export all of that data. There are 360 records right in Excel, so you can email that off or incorporate it into a mail merge or send it to your mailing house for fulfillment of a publication mailing, etc. Okay. We also have other options. We can export to Microsoft Word as a PDF file. If you'd like to release that information without allowing modification, we can export it as a comma-separated value file. You can even export it as an XML file. Okay. From there, we also have the ability to apply some reporting capabilities. If you want to run your query and have it generate in a format that's more appropriately printed, we can do that. So you can see that display beneath there. And then also, we have the ability to secure this query. So you can provide security at the query level and also at the folder level. So in this case, by default, all of our queries allow for authenticated users to have full control. So authenticated users being your iMIS staff that have access either with a full license or a casual license. But we notice you have a variety of different levels of kind of role-based security. You also have the ability to add individual users. So if you wanted to go ahead and customize that, you could pick and choose individual users from your internal staff list to access this query. They can also have different levels of control. You can allow people to run the query without being able to edit it, and so forth and so on. So I can go ahead and close this query now. And what I wanted to point out is as this recycles, when I go into my webinar folder, here's my query, and when I run this query from within the IQA main menu without going into the edit mode, let's go ahead and run that. Just by double-clicking on it, I can execute the query. I can go ahead and select California there. When I click Find, notice now I have this little select icon that allows me to click on that icon and get in there in my demo environment. And while it did error, I'd point out that it did actually populate Tyrone Abrams' record, as well as the other 360 records within the results set from that IQA query. So we've gone from the IQA query right back into our customer portfolio. We're now able to work within that record and select other records here that allow for working within that record, updating that information, etc. So moving back to the other demonstrations, what I wanted to show is some of the other ways that IQA impacts your displays within iMIS. So in this next demonstration, I wanted to point out that we've got a dashboard that is actually standard functionality within the iMIS 20 implementations. This is the web view for staff users, both full and casual users. And you'll notice it's got pretty robust dashboard features out of the box iMIS within this display that are showing us metrics about your contacts and your members, membership by region, and then we've got our 5 newest members displayed right there. So let's go ahead and take a look at how that works in the iMIS environment. So here I am looking at a Google Chrome browser. I'm logged into the web view of iMIS 20 here. On our community homepage, I've got this dashboard that's got a ton of cool visuals on there. And I'm looking at this list of the 5 newest members, but what I would really love to have on this is perhaps their email or maybe their phone number, just some way I could contact them and reach out personally and welcome them to the organization. So instead of having to recreate a ton of different IQA queries or do some sort of custom reporting or go and literally look up these individuals one by one, what I can do is I can simply go into the Intelligent Query Architect and navigate through the folder structure down to our sample sites, going to the dashboards folder, which is just the organizational structure that's been established for this particular website. I can go into the contacts area, and I can see this is the newest members IQA. I can highlight that and click Edit. And while it's the web interface, it's very similar to using the IQA through the back office application. The sources are established, CS contact and member type, so pretty straightforward stuff. What I really want to do is I just want to go ahead and change the display. So I'm going to go ahead and click on All again to display all of the objects. And I can then go ahead and scroll down and identify those fields that I would like to include. So there's our CS contact email. Let's go on down. I'll pull up, say, go for their work phone. So I'll just refresh that contact information. I'll click Save. I'll click Close. And now if I go back to this Contacts dashboard and simply refresh the screen, I now have that contact information available for those 5 new members. So all of these separate components of these various dashboard elements are driven by IQA queries. So you could see if you wanted to break out your regions based upon something other than these kind of larger, North America by regions. If you're just a U.S.-based domestic organization, you could break it out by state as opposed by country. So got a lot of flexibility there. In terms of the next sample that I wanted to show us, here's a sample of content that we actually added to a WCM or RISE-based member-facing website. This was based upon a foundation type of model. And what I did was I went in and created a navigation item under the Who We Are top navigation level element. I added a current donors navigation item, and it's a very simple content page that is literally comprised of just an IQA query that allows you to pull up a donor list based upon the fiscal year. So when I take a look at the next page here, I just wanted to show you what the output looks like. Again, it's very simplistic for purposes of demonstrating the featured functionality of IQA here, but essentially just by entering the fiscal year, the user, and again, this is public-facing on the web. I am logged into the website, and we can secure this to be for authenticated users, or you can make it available to people who are just browsing the site. But essentially, by selecting the fiscal year, they're able to display a list of either individuals or the companies that have made contributions during that 2013 fiscal year. And from there, optionally, you can allow users to export the data to Word, Excel, etc. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of how that was built. So again, here is the donor list page. I can go ahead and click on this Who We Are element, which defaults to this kind of splash page about the iMIS Foundation. This was the current donors navigation item I added to the Who We Are element. And you can see this page is essentially just the IQA query. Of course, you can add other content to it. This was a very simple content page that was essentially one column of content. Now, taking a look in the browser-based application under the RISE options, we've got our content designer. Under our site designer, under the site maps for the donor site, we have this Who We Are element, and I just added the current donors piece right there. And the content that we have there is the content created through our content designer. Under our sample websites and under donors here, in our content areas, there's the donor list content. And when I go to edit this donor list content, you can see it's a single column of content, and the one element that I've incorporated here is an iPart for the query menu for the donor query. And when I go to configure this, what I want to show you is that while we just get the ability to name the content, we can give it a title, there are a number of different options that we can incorporate or select for this particular iPart. The key component here is that the source query right here, when we go to select this, is the ability to look at that donor list CE IQA query. So this is where you select the IQA query that is then incorporated into that content. So once that's selected, we can go ahead and save that, and that literally just generates that output in our donor list, which allows me to say, in 2013, here's our list of donors. So that's pretty much what I had in store for demonstrating IQA and how it can really empower your users and enable the access of data from within iMIS. Don, do you want to go ahead and open it up to questions?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris. So as Chris mentioned, we're going to enter into a question and answer session right now. So if you have any questions regarding the presentation you just saw here today, please submit those using that Q&A tab at the top of your screen. Just type in your question and we'll take them as they come in. Now we do have a few questions that were submitted prior to the webinar, so Chris, I'm going to throw those out to you one at a time here. First one is, what versions of iMIS is IQA available for?
So IQA has a number of different iterations. It was first available on iMIS 15. There's no additional licensing required for it. Those initial introductory versions of IQA do not have the ability to present the graphics and charts within IQA, but the latest versions on iMIS 15.2 and iMIS 20 do have that capability. That being said, also the ability to publish IQA data out onto these into the iParts, which allow for incorporation into web views. Those are available on iMIS 15.2 and iMIS 20 as well, but not on the earlier versions of iMIS 15.
Okay, another question that we had come in was, someone said, I have a bunch of ad hoc queries. Is there a way to convert those to the IQA format?
Well, that's a good way to learn how to use IQA. There's no standard conversion from ad hoc queries into IQA, so those would require that you and your staff spend some time taking those ad hoc queries and turning them into IQAs. I'd say the biggest the upside to that process is you might have 20 ad hoc queries for looking for different states or looking up different member types, et cetera, you might be able to replace, say, 10 ad hoc queries with one IQA query that has a prompt that allows you to select the state or select the member type. So you should be able to consolidate many of those separate ad hoc queries into a smaller number of IQA queries.
Another question that came in, Chris, was one visitor said that we've got iMIS 15, but we don't see the IQA option in their menu. How do they access it?
Okay, so that's actually part of the user credential setup. IQA, as I said, is standard with the iMIS application. And when we go ahead and look at, go ahead and make sure you can see the content here. When we look at user credentials for a particular record, we want to be sure to select specific roles for a particular user. So sorry, this local demo is currently overburdened by all the applications I have running on it now. But if we go into our user credentials for this particular record, right under here we've got our groups. By selecting reporting user, and depending upon the modules that you have available to you, event user, if you're fundraising, if you have the fundraising module, you'd select FR user. If you have the orders module, the order user. But reporting is really the key one. So event user, fundraising user, order user, depending upon your module selection, and then reporting. Once those are enabled for either a full or a casual user, you should have this IQA option available when you log into the back office iMIS application.
All right, we'll allow just a few more moments for any questions. Again, use that Q&A tab at the top of your screen. If you've got any questions, we'll give you a few more moments to enter those in if you have them. Okay, it appears that there's no additional questions. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. I'd also like to thank Chris for a great presentation. If you have any questions regarding IQA reporting, please feel free to contact us. My email address is right there on the screen, don@broadpoint.net. And we look forward to seeing you at the next Broadpoint Technologies event. Once again, actually it looks like a couple questions may have come in at the last moment. One person asking about the recording. Yes, We'll be posting the recording. It usually takes a day or two to get that available. So possibly by the end of this week, if not, then certainly early next week, and we'll let you know how you can access the recording. So we'll get back to you on that. So again, thanks everyone for attending. Have a great afternoon, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Goodbye.